So thank you for watching. Alright. I love religious freedom. But sometimes there are things that are not a violation of it that are accused of being, or people claim something that is not a violation of it. Here's my thoughts about things that are not a violation of either the principles, constitutional principle of freedom of religion, or the United States constitutional right, or the general principle that hopefully all countries should have and will have, or the principle of just people getting along, being a civilized society, and how to treat other people in your private life. So, a national holiday that is based on our religion is not forcing me to obey that religion or believe that religion. Now, it's different if, in addition to like schools and government buildings being closed down, if I get whipped or shot or imprisoned if I'm caught doing something in my home or on a public street that's not with that religion. You know, if all the restaurants close down in a city because it's a month of fasting for a religion, that's not a violation of my rights. But if I get whipped or shot for having a bottle of water with me because I don't worship the same dumb idol that they do or worship the true and living God the way they do, and I'm not fasting that month, I should not be subject to punishment by the government or punishment by an individual. If you don't want me to come whipping you and it's the day that I fast, don't come whip me, or do worse, the day that you're fasting. So it would be a violation of my religion, like on a national religious holiday or national holiday based on a religion, if in my own house I don't get to eat or drink or do whatever it is that the religion is doing at that time in that place, or not doing. A general acknowledgement that there is a God is not forcing me to believe any certain thing about him. It's not violating anyone's rights. And even then, to the degree that it is violating rights, it is violation of rights if the government doesn't do that, because then the one religion that is very certain and unified about that subject, atheism, is getting their way. So it would be a violation. Public figures can have their personal beliefs and speak about their personal beliefs. My religious rights are not violated if I live in a government in a place where there's an elected government and the government person, happens to say what he thinks about things. If there is a king and the king has his beliefs, if he doesn't force me to believe that way, my rights aren't violated if his personal opinions come out somehow. Bland prayers. The prayer declared unconstitutional by the Supreme Court in the 1960s, it was extremely bland. It was something like, God, please bless our nation, our teachers, and us. That's it. The Supreme Court was wrong. In fact, the Supreme Court did violate the Establishment Clause by establishing atheism, because the only possible group that could be offended by that bland prayer is atheists. A Buddhist, a Jain, a Sikh, a Muslim, that did not violate their religious beliefs to just say, God, thank you, and please bless. With the prayer mentioned nothing about God's nature, who he is, what he is, how he relates to us, what God wants us to do, what God doesn't want us to do. Nothing. Bland prayers like that are not a violation of religious rights, religious freedom. Historic symbols and names um, in the government seals and things. Even though I don't use the word saint the way a Catholic does, and thus, when a Catholic named a city, a lake, a mountain, saint something, they were thinking something very different than what I think. They were thinking something that's different than my religion. My rights are not violated in the least. If we keep the name Saint so-and-so, or whatever the name is, it's Los Angeles, the Angels, that has some religious potential meaning or historic, was there because of the beliefs of the founders of the city. And just the same symbols. If there is a cross, or that's the most prominent example I can think of, that people have been suing to get the cross off of the Los Angeles seal. The place was founded by Catholic friars. It's a historic fact. 0 people's religious rights are violated. I am not hurt at all by that cross, that's not my religious symbol, being on the seal for a city because that city's founders were devoted to a religion that used crosses. War memorials have crosses. I don't use crosses. My religion doesn't use crosses. But our rights are not violated at all by crosses being put up at war memorials. Nobody's forced to obey a religion or be of a religion if the historic situation of a country is a cross being the religious symbol for the majority of the people, especially people when a country was founded. Alright. My religious rights are not violated at all by people telling me that I am wrong about things, or that my religion is wrong about things. So you can, with my religion, there's a lot of people very vocal and very eager to tell you we're wrong. They are not violating our religious rights. Some of them go to places where we are likely to be, like our pageants or our temples. That's a little bit rude. We don't do that to other people. We don't, surround the place where the Pope is meeting. We don't surround a new Catholic cathedral, new Jehovah's Witness building. We don't do that stuff. It's rude. But maybe there's room for more rudeness. But just, it's not violating to say that we're wrong about things. And that has happened. It's not a violation of my religious rights if you say my marriage is not a legitimate marriage. And that's happened to me. Now somebody's doubting me probably, or accusing me of lying. And then maybe I don't get enough views that somebody that watches my video does that. But here's the specific example of when somebody told me that my marriage is not a legitimate marriage, that it will not last into the eternities, that I'm going to have a rough judgment day because of my marriage. Now, they did not say it does not count for marriage in this life, or that I'm sinning in having sex in this life with my marriage. They didn't say that. But there is a YouTube channel named Gospel Tangents, and pretty good name for the channel. Every video I've seen on that channel is an interview format with somebody who the channel operator decided is important enough or interesting enough to get in front of a camera and interview. A lot of them are scholars of some sort, have written books. One of his guests was a current polygamist. Now, I don't remember if she's current in the sense that she is in the middle of a polygamous marriage now, or if her husband was dead, or the husband's other wives were dead, died of old age. She was up there in years. But she still had the beliefs about polygamy, even if she was not in the current circumstances of having a living husband with living other wives. And she said that my marriage is not going to last for the eternities. That according to her, Doctrine and Covenants 132 lets us know that God is going to punish me for my marriage. Now, she was wrong about what Doctrine and Covenants 132 says. She did not try to understand it, because you cannot really try to understand it and come to the conclusion she did. But she did not, in the least bit, violate my religious rights and freedom to say that she believed that I was wrong. And I'm not violating, just the same, I'm not violating your rights and your religious freedom if I'm of the understanding that your marriage is not going to continue in the next life, or if I believe that your marriage is not a marriage at all and is not legitimate and does not count with God now, and that your sex is sinful. It's not violating your rights if I have that understanding and say it. Just like it did not violate my rights when she accused my marriage of being one that is one that God is going to punish me for and give me a scolding for at Judgment Day. It's not a violation of my religious rights if you avoid my religion. Nobody should be forced to go to any other religion. And that includes things like celebrations of religious events. You know, an 8-year-old birthday party that includes something about the child's baptism. If you believe that my religion is wrong in some way and you don't want to be a clown at my party, or make a birthday cake that says happy birthday and baptism, it's your right to not be a part of that celebration and not be going to my religious thing. Uniforms. Uniform requirements could be or could not be a violation of the principle of government forcing religion or forcing you to not follow your religion because of it being a government agency, or just how we, aside from the government in our private life, deal with each other. I don't think the concept of uniforms in general is a violation of our religious rights. It's all right for a government agency to say, when people need us, they're going to know it's us and not somebody else because we got this uniform. When somebody's in our building, they're going to know who to talk to about things. We got our uniform. Now, so it's all right to say you have to wear this color clothes, have pants. It's not a violation of our religious freedom if there is a place where food is being prepared and they say you don't get to have loose clothing hanging into the food. That's not your religious right to work at a restaurant and have religious clothing that is loose and hangs down into things. Alright. It's not a violation of my religious beliefs, my religious rights, if there is a recipe and you expect me to follow that recipe. If I'm in some kind of a cooking class, if I'm working at a restaurant, if I'm a private chef and you're rich enough to have a private chef and you say, here's the recipe, here's the thing I want, and that recipe includes things that my religion says God does not want us to eat and drink. Following the recipe is not a problem. And I'm not saying this because of my history with fast food to calm my troubled conscience. God is not going to punish me. God has zero problems with when I worked at a fast food place and I sold coffee and tea and I made coffee and tea. Because that was the recipe there. That was the menu there. Okay, so now another related subject. The last two things on my list are ideas I got about this subject because of actual news stories. Oh, in case I didn't make it clear before, the thing that got me most fired up about this subject was hearing the polygamist um, not try to understand Doctrine and Covenants 132 and accuse my marriage of not being a legitimate one. It got me stirred up, it stung a little, but it was not a violation of my rights. You know, emotional stinging to hear that. Whoa, really? Okay, now, back to the other thing. So, news stories. There was a sick woman who was riding a go-kart, and her hair somehow got tangled up in the go-kart's moving parts, its motors or axles, wheels, and they cut her hair to free her from it. She sued. Wow. And she was wrong. In general, I think highly of sick people. She's not an example of sick people I think highly of. Because she was being, wow, no. Her religious rights were not violated when they saved her from needing to carry around a go-kart on top of her head or having it keep pulling her hair in until it ripped her scalp out. If somebody's hair is tangled up, no matter how much the religion teaches not to cut it, you're not violating their rights if you cut the hair instead of spending days untangling it or dismantling a motor. I have to wonder if that woman was actually following her religion, because Sikhs are not only not supposed to cut their hair, but they are supposed to twirl it up and then put a kesh through it, which is a wooden comb, and then have a fabric covering over it, a turban. So how did her hair that was all done up like that get snagged? I have to wonder if it was hanging loose, which then meant she wasn't following her religion. But even if her hair was all up in the sick way, it's not violating the religion to cut somebody's hair to save them, to untangle them from a mess. Now, under any other circumstance, it would be rude and or a violation if you're in the government doing it to cut the sick hair. Alright, other examples where there's an emergency response that is not a violation of my religious rights or somebody else's religious rights, that's okay. In case you don't know yet, in my religion we have sacred underwear, religious underwear. It is extremely rude for you to get a hold of this underwear and try it on, because it is for believers who have made sacred covenants with God. So you're being rude and violating peaceful coexistence if you're, get a hold of some temple garments, is what we call them, and try them on. If you demand I take my garments off, under any circumstance other than you're a doctor and need them to to close out of the way to perform your doctorly duties, that's okay to say, okay, I'm a heart doctor. I need to get to the heart. You said you had pain in your genitals. Get the genitals out so I can examine them. That's okay. If I am hurt and you're trying to help me, and you could help me without cutting my temple garments, then don't cut them if they don't need to be. I thought about this because a coworker had heard about a news story where somebody, probably of my religion, had sacred religious clothing that they were trying to talk an EMT into not cutting. But you're not violating my religious rights at all if you need to cut through my temple garments to save my life. So don't hesitate if you're in that scenario where I am severely hurt or sick and you need to get my temple garments out of the way to save my life. Please do not hesitate. I speak in behalf of all members of my church. I don't think there's any of us who's confused or wrong about this. It's all right if you cut away our temple garments when we are dying and you can save our life. If you're a doctor, if you're an emergency technician, an emergency medical technician, if you're a good Samaritan, if you're just a nice person who knows what they're doing and can actually help save her life, cut away. You're not violating my religion or my religious rights or us peacefully coexisting if you save my life. Okay. Grocery store. I heard a news story where there was a woman who was working as a cashier at a grocery store, and she was Muslim. And she was claiming that it was a violation of her religious rights and the store was mistreating her if they wanted her to do her job and touch the containers that had pork on the inside. When you go to a grocery store in the United States of America, probably anywhere in the world, I've got limited experience elsewhere in the world, but when you go to a grocery store, they usually have the meat inside of some kind of container. So you're not touching the meat, you're touching a container. That Muslim woman's rights, and any Muslim woman or man's rights, are not violated if they want to work at a grocery store and they're expected to touch the packaging for the product sold at that store. She also complained about touching the alcohol bottles or selling alcohol. You're working at a store where that's an option for people to buy. Your rights are not being violated if they say, we're a store that sells this stuff. Guess what? You have to hold it over the scanner, put it in a bag, and get money from people. You didn't encourage them to do it. They were already going to buy that alcohol. They already went to the back of the store and bought the meat. So, now you know what I think are not violations of religious rights and freedoms. If you know me personally and you want to have a talk, I will not file a complaint with our boss if you want to tell me that my religion's wrong. It's your right to do that. And my rights are not violated if we're on break and you say, Hammond 9631, can we talk? I want to tell you that your religion's wrong, and here's why. Alright, thank you for watching. You have a good day.